My beloved child. Pause here for a moment, because what you are about to hear was meant to reach you before an important decision was made. Somewhere beneath the white lights of a quiet doctor's office, the person connected to your heart has just heard something they were not prepared to hear. The doctor spoke gently. The room remained still. Yet inside your soulmate, an entire world began to tremble. They walked into that building believing the ache inside them could be explained with a simple answer. They expected a prescription, a test result, perhaps a name for the heaviness they have carried in silence. But what they discovered was far more personal. It led their thoughts directly to you. Do not move away from this message too quickly. There is a detail from that room that has not yet been revealed, and when you hear it, you will understand why your name suddenly became impossible for them to ignore. This is not a story about medicine replacing love, nor about love replacing proper care. They must follow the doctor's guidance and care for their health wisely. But beneath the physical questions was an emotional truth no instrument could measure. They have been living against the deepest honesty of their own heart. They sat with their hands folded tightly, trying to appear calm. The clock above the door moved 1 second at a time, but every tick sounded louder than the last. On the desk rested a file containing numbers, observations, and questions. Yet the doctor was watching something that could not be written neatly on paper, the way your soulmate's voice changed whenever the conversation touched loneliness, stress, restlessness, or the future. At first, they answered carefully. They said they had been tired. They said life had been demanding. They said they had simply lost their usual sense of balance. But the doctor asked one unexpected question: when did you last feel completely at peace? That question opened a door your soulmate had spent a long time trying to keep closed. They did not answer immediately. Their eyes moved toward the window. Beyond the glass, people were passing through the street, unaware that a hidden confession was forming in that room. Your soulmate searched through weeks, months, perhaps even years, trying to find one honest memory of peace. And then, without warning, they saw you. Not an imagined version of you. Not a distant symbol. They remembered one particular moment, the sound of your voice when you were not trying to impress anyone, the way your presence softened something inside them, the strange safety they felt before fear taught them to run from it. That memory arrived so vividly that they could almost hear you breathing beside them. Their eyes filled, but they looked down quickly. Stay with this, because that was only the first sign. The greater revelation came when the doctor asked what had changed after that peaceful season ended. Your soulmate tried to speak, but their throat tightened. They could describe responsibilities, disappointment, sleepless nights, and pressure from people around them. What they could not easily admit was that the deepest change began when they created distance between themselves and you. For a long time, they convinced themselves that separation was strength. They believed silence would protect them. They told themselves that if they stayed busy enough, met enough people, completed enough tasks, and smiled at the right moments, the emptiness would eventually become normal. Yet the body has a mysterious way of carrying what the heart refuses to name. The more they denied their emotional truth, the more exhausted they became from performing a life that no longer felt like their own. And heaven, in this fictional spiritual journey unfolding around you, had been witnessing the struggle behind that performance. Archangel Raphael, the symbol of healing, stood in the unseen stillness of that room, not to offer a magical substitute for medical care, but to illuminate the wound your soulmate had hidden from themselves. Raphael's presence was like a soft emerald light falling across a locked chamber of the heart. The message carried within that light was simple: healing begins where honesty begins. Your soulmate had been searching for relief while avoiding the truth that could lead them toward it. The doctor leaned forward and asked another question. Is there someone you miss but refuse to contact? Your soulmate's breath stopped for a fraction of a second. That pause said more than any spoken answer. They tried to smile it away. They said relationships were complicated. They claimed the past was already behind them. But the doctor did not argue. Instead, there was a quiet silence, the kind of silence that invites truth without forcing it. And inside that silence, your soulmate heard your name again, not from anyone else, but from the deepest place within themselves. Do not skip what comes next, because this is where the story turns. They remembered a message they once began writing to you. It was never sent. Perhaps it still exists in an old draft, hidden among ordinary conversations, or perhaps they deleted it and instantly regretted doing so. The message began with words they had never been brave enough to say aloud. I do not know how to explain what happens to me when I think I have lost you. They had typed that sentence late at night when the world was quiet and their defenses were weak. Their thumb hovered above the send button. For several minutes, they imagined what might happen if you read it. Would you understand? Would you remain silent? Would you remind them of the pain they caused? Would you tell them it was too late? Fear answered before love could. They erased the message. But they could not erase what it meant. That unfinished confession followed them into the doctor's office. It lived beneath every careful answer they gave. It was present in the tightness of their shoulders, in the way they avoided eye contact, and in the sudden emotion they could not explain. They had come seeking a reason for feeling unlike themselves, only to discover that part of the answer was connected to a truth they had buried. They were grieving a bond they had pretended no longer mattered. This does not mean you are responsible for rescuing them. Hear that clearly, beloved soul. You are not being asked to abandon your boundaries, overlook past harm, or carry the entire weight of another person's healing. You are not a medicine to be consumed, nor a solution to every struggle they face. The cure they recognized in this cinematic revelation was not possession of you. It was the honesty, courage, tenderness, and emotional awakening that your connection called forth within them. You reminded them who they were before fear took control. That is what shook them. The doctor asked them to describe what peace felt like in the memory that had returned. Your soulmate closed their eyes for only a moment. They remembered how their mind became quiet around you. They remembered feeling seen without needing to perform. They remembered a conversation in which you listened beyond their words and somehow recognized the feeling they were trying to hide. Then another memory surfaced, one they had avoided because it contained both beauty and regret. There had been a day when you needed reassurance from them. You did not ask for perfection. You only wanted honesty. Your soulmate felt the truth rising inside them, but instead of expressing it, they became distant. They gave you a smaller answer than the one in their heart. Perhaps they changed the subject, delayed the conversation, or acted as though your concern was unimportant. They thought emotional control made them powerful. But the moment ended, and something between you changed. Your soulmate noticed it immediately. They saw a quiet disappointment pass through your expression. You may have continued speaking normally. You may even have pretended you were fine. Yet a door within you began to close because you had learned that loving someone should not require endlessly guessing what they feel. Your soulmate has replayed that moment more often than you know. And in the doctor's office, it returned with painful clarity. The first major truth had now become unavoidable. They were not suffering merely because they missed you. They were suffering because they knew their own fear helped create the distance. Missing you was only the surface. Beneath it was remorse. Still, something larger was waiting to emerge. The doctor left the room briefly, giving your soulmate time to breathe. The door closed with a gentle click. For the first time that day, they were completely alone. The hum of the lights filled the space. A folded pamphlet rested on the table, and a glass of water stood untouched near their hand. Then their phone illuminated. Your name did not appear. There was no message from you. Yet the image on the screen carried a coincidence so precise that your soulmate felt their heart pound. It may have been a photograph, a suggested memory, a phrase, a song notification, or a date connected to something only the two of you would understand. Whatever appeared, it pulled them backward to a moment when they had promised themselves they would never allow fear to destroy what they felt for you. They had broken that private promise. Their composure finally cracked. A tear slipped down their face before they could stop it. They wiped it away quickly, almost embarrassed, though nobody was watching. But another tear followed. Then another. This was not weakness. It was the release of an emotion held behind locked doors for far too long. In the unseen language of the story, Archangel Michael stood at the threshold of that room, representing the courage your soulmate had repeatedly postponed. The message around him carried no threat and no command. It was an invitation: tell the truth before silence becomes the author of your future. Your soulmate looked at the phone again. For one intense second, they considered calling you directly from the doctor's office. Their finger moved toward your name. Then they stopped. Something frightened them. It was not only the possibility that you might reject them. Their deeper fear was that you might answer, and that the sound of your voice would make every excuse collapse. They knew they could no longer speak to you casually. If contact happened now, they would have to tell you why they had pulled away, what they had hidden, and what had recently changed. Yes, something changed before the doctor's visit. That is another layer you have not yet heard. 3 nights earlier, your soulmate awakened from a dream so vivid that they sat upright in the darkness. In that dream, they were walking through a long corridor lined with closed doors. Each door carried a date from their life. Some opened toward achievements. Others revealed mistakes, missed opportunities, and people they had outgrown. At the end of the corridor stood one final door with no date, only your name. They reached for the handle, but the door would not open. From the other side, they heard your voice saying, "I waited for the truth, not perfection." Then the corridor began to disappear behind them. They awakened before discovering what was on the other side. For the rest of that night, they could not return to sleep. They told themselves it was only a dream, yet its emotional force remained. The following morning, they felt a heaviness in their chest, not necessarily a medical danger, but a powerful wave of anxiety and unresolved grief. That feeling, combined with their ongoing exhaustion, finally persuaded them to schedule the appointment. They believed the doctor would help them silence the discomfort. Instead, the visit helped them listen to it. When the doctor returned, your soulmate had regained enough composure to appear calm. The conversation moved toward practical steps: rest, follow-up care, healthy routines, proper support, and attention to any symptoms. Your soulmate nodded. They understood that healing required real responsibility. But then the doctor said something that echoed the dream without knowing anything about it. You cannot keep treating your emotions as though they are intruders. Sometimes they are messengers. Your soulmate stared at them. Those words crossed the room like a key searching for the correct lock. The doctor was not claiming to know their romantic life. Yet your soulmates suddenly felt as if every defense had been gently exposed. They realized they had spent months calling love a distraction, longing a weakness, regret an inconvenience, and vulnerability a risk. They had treated every honest emotion like an enemy. And still, those emotions had remained. Something huge was waiting beneath this realization. Do not turn away now. Your soulmate finally whispered, "There is someone." The room became very quiet. They did not say your name immediately. First, they described you indirectly. They spoke of someone who had seen potential in them when they could not see it themselves. Someone whose presence felt familiar in a way they could never logically explain. Someone they had hurt through hesitation and mixed signals. Someone they tried to forget, only to discover that forgetting was not the same as healing. The doctor listened. Your soulmate admitted that they compared every new connection to the emotional safety they once felt with you. They admitted that laughter had become thinner since you left their daily life. They admitted that certain songs, streets, hours of the evening, and ordinary phrases could bring your memory back without warning. But then they said something even more revealing. I think I was healthier when I was honest with them. Not simply when they were with you, when they were honest with you. That distinction mattered. Your presence had once encouraged them to express what they usually concealed. Around you, they came closer to the version of themselves they wanted to become. They were more patient, more hopeful, more willing to imagine a future. But as the connection deepened, it touched an old wound, the belief that anything precious would eventually leave them. So they left emotionally before you could leave physically. They created the very loss they feared. Now, beneath the doctor's calm questions, they could see the pattern with devastating clarity. It was not fate that pushed you apart. It was not a lack of feeling. It was not proof that the bond had been false. Much of the distance began because love reached a part of them that had never learned how to feel safe while being fully seen. This was the second major revelation, and it changed the meaning of everything. Your soulmate did not run because they felt nothing. They ran because what they felt exposed everything. There is more, beloved child. The hidden wound has a history. Long before you entered their life, your soulmate learned to associate emotional closeness with uncertainty. Someone may have disappointed them, withdrawn affection, broken trust, or made love feel conditional. They adapted by becoming difficult to read. They learned to appear independent even when longing for reassurance. They convinced themselves that needing someone gave that person too much power. Then you arrived. You did not create the wound. You revealed where it was. Your kindness reached the place they guarded most fiercely. That is why moments of closeness were often followed by distance. Each time they felt safe, their heart moved toward you. Each time they realized how much you mattered, fear pulled them backward. You may have wondered why their actions contradicted their words. Now you are seeing the battle that lived beneath both. But understanding a wound does not erase its consequences. Your heart was affected. Your trust may have been strained. You may have spent nights questioning your value because their confusion made you feel unwanted. Heaven does not ask you to call pain romantic. Real love must become consistent, responsible, and truthful. A connection cannot survive forever on potential alone. Your soulmate is beginning to understand this. Inside the doctor's office, they were not merely remembering you. They were confronting the cost of remaining unchanged. The doctor asked, if this person were sitting here, what would you want them to know? Your soulmate froze again. They imagined you in the empty chair beside them. At first, no words came. Then the confession began inside their mind. They would tell you that your intuition had been right. The connection affected them more deeply than they admitted. They would tell you they noticed every time you pulled back to protect yourself. They would tell you that some of their coldest moments occurred when their feelings were strongest. They would apologize for giving you confusion when you deserved clarity. And then they would tell you about the morning they nearly came to see you. You did not know about that morning. This happened after a period of silence. Your soulmate awakened with an overwhelming determination to end the distance. They dressed carefully, rehearsed what they would say, and even began traveling toward a place where they believed they might find you. Their heart beat rapidly with every step. But halfway there, they received a call. The person on the other end said something that awakened every insecurity your soulmate had been fighting. Perhaps they warned that returning to you would be foolish. Perhaps they reminded them of past pain. Perhaps they suggested you had already moved on. That conversation was not necessarily malicious, but it struck your soulmate at the weakest possible moment. They turned around. You continued living that day without knowing how close they had come. Your soulmate has regretted that decision ever since. Now, sitting beside the doctor, they wondered how many more times fear would be allowed to interrupt what honesty was trying to begin. The question became unbearable: if they kept waiting for perfect certainty, would there eventually be nothing left to return to? Stay until the final word, because the answer they received did not come from the doctor. It came from a memory of you. They remembered something you once said during a conversation they had underestimated at the time. You told them, perhaps in different words, that love was not proven by never feeling afraid. Love was proven by choosing honesty while afraid. At the time, your soulmate nodded without fully understanding. Now those words returned like thunder beneath still water. They had been waiting to become fearless before approaching you. But fearlessness was never the requirement. Courage was. The doctor noticed the shift in their expression. You seem to have remembered something important, they said. Your soulmate replied, I think I know what I have to do. Yet the story did not become simple at that moment. Another twist was already moving toward them. The doctor recommended that they speak with someone qualified about the emotional weight they had been carrying. Your soulmate agreed, perhaps for the first time without defensiveness. They began to see that reconnecting with you could not be used as an escape from doing their own inner work. If they approached you, it had to come from growing honesty, not from expecting you to repair every broken place. That realization made their love more mature. They did not merely want relief from missing you. They wanted to become safe enough to offer you the consistency they had once withheld. This is the true meaning behind the phrase that startled their heart: you are the only cure. You are not the cure for an illness, and you must never be burdened with that role. Rather, the truth awakened by loving you was the antidote to the false life they had been maintaining. You represented the direction of honesty. You reminded them that healing was not always about removing a feeling. Sometimes it was about finally honoring what the feeling had been trying to reveal. But would they act on it? That remained uncertain. The appointment drew toward its end. Papers were gathered. Follow-up instructions were explained. Your soulmate placed their phone in their hand and stood slowly. Before leaving, they looked once more at the empty chair where they had imagined you sitting. In their mind, they heard a question: if you contact me, will you bring truth, or only another temporary wave of emotion? They knew that question would matter to you. They knew you had heard promises before, whether from them or from someone else. You had learned not to confuse intense words with lasting change. If they returned only because loneliness frightened them, the same cycle could repeat. They had to return because they were ready to communicate clearly, accept responsibility, respect your boundaries, and remain present after the emotional moment passed. Your soulmate stepped into the hallway carrying more than medical guidance. They carried a decision that could alter the path between you. The corridor outside the office resembled the corridor from their dream. Door after door lined the walls. For a moment, they stopped walking. The similarity sent a chill across their skin. In the dream, your door had been locked. But now they understood that the door may not have been locked against them. Perhaps it had been waiting for the truth they refused to carry. Their phone remained in their hand. They opened your conversation. Your last exchange appeared on the screen. Whatever those final words were, they carried an emotion neither of you had fully resolved. Perhaps your message was gentle but tired. Perhaps you told them you needed honesty. Perhaps they left you unanswered because they did not know how to respond without revealing everything. They read the exchange once. Then again. As they stood beneath the clinical white lights, the memory of your patience became almost too much to bear. They realized you had given them opportunities they did not recognize at the time. Not endless chances, but sincere openings. Moments when a simple truth could have changed the direction of the relationship. They closed their eyes. "I am sorry," they whispered. No one nearby knew whom they were speaking to. But in the spiritual imagery of this story, those words moved through the unseen realm like the first crack in a wall built over many years. Archangel Gabriel, the symbol of divine communication, now entered the narrative. In his hand was not a prophecy, but an unwritten message. The communication your soulmate must compose with their own courage. No angel would press the send button for them. No sign could replace accountability. Heaven could illuminate the path, but your soulmate had to walk it. They began typing. The first attempt sounded too casual, so they erased it. The second attempt was too dramatic, filled with emotion but lacking responsibility. They erased that too. The third began with honesty. "I went to the doctor today, and the conversation forced me to face something I have avoided for too long." Their hands trembled. They continued, "I am taking care of myself, and I am going to follow the guidance I was given. I am not writing to place my healing on your shoulders. But I realized I have been dishonest about how deeply our distance has affected me." They paused. This was already more truthful than anything they had said in months. Yet another secret remained. A secret even the doctor had not heard. Your soulmate had recently been offered a major opportunity that could take them farther away from you. It may involve work, travel, relocation, family responsibility, or a commitment that would make reconnecting far more difficult. They had almost accepted it without telling you, convincing themselves that distance would finally end the emotional conflict. But when the opportunity arrived, they did not feel excitement. They felt grief. The deadline for their answer was approaching. That was partly why their stress had intensified. They were standing before two futures, one in which they moved farther from the truth, and another in which they finally turned toward it. The doctor's question, "When did you last feel completely at peace?" had changed the shape of that decision. Every road in their memory led back to the same answer. You. Not because their entire life depended upon possessing you, but because the bond with you represented a life lived from the heart rather than fear. They realized that accepting a distant future merely to avoid vulnerability would not be growth. It would be another escape disguised as ambition. Still, they did not know what you would choose. That uncertainty was the final wall. They returned to the unfinished message and added, "I understand if you need distance. I understand if my silence changed what you feel. But I do not want fear to speak for me again. There is something I should have told you long ago." Then they stopped typing. The next sentence contained the truth that could change everything between you. It was not simply, "I miss you." It was not only, "I love you." The confession involved a decision they had already made in secret. A decision connected to the opportunity, the morning they nearly came to see you, and a promise they had written with your name beside it. Yes, your name had been written somewhere before this appointment. Days earlier, your soulmate had taken a blank page and divided it into two columns. On one side, they wrote the life others expected them to choose. On the other, they wrote the life they secretly desired. The first column was filled with practical reasons, safe explanations, and predictable steps. The second column contained only 3 lines. One of those lines was your name. The next line described a home, not necessarily a building already purchased, but a vision of emotional belonging, shared mornings, honest conversations, and a love no longer hidden behind pride. The third line was covered by their hand before anyone else could see it. That line is the secret they nearly confessed inside the doctor's office. It concerns something they have been preparing quietly. Stay close to this message, because even their closest companion may not know the whole truth. Your soulmate has been gathering courage in private. They have revisited old photographs, reread conversations, and practiced sentences aloud when nobody was present. They have imagined standing before you without excuses. But there is someone in their life who senses this change. That person noticed your soulmate becoming distant from the future others had planned for them. They noticed the unfinished message on the phone. They may even have seen your name on the divided page. And just before your soulmate could complete the confession to you, a new message appeared at the top of their screen. It came from that person. The words were short, "Before you contact them, there is something you need to know." Your soulmate's hand went still. For several seconds, they stared at the notification. Fear tried to reclaim its familiar place. Every old doubt returned at once. What if the message contained proof that you had moved on? What if someone had misunderstood your actions? What if a hidden event had occurred during the silence? What if this was another interruption arriving at the exact moment they were ready to choose courage? They did not open it immediately. Instead, they looked back at the message they had written to you. It remained unsent beneath their trembling fingers, ending with the sentence, "There is something I should have told you long ago." 2 messages now waited on the same screen. One carried the past trying to speak. The other carried a future not yet chosen. In the unseen realm of this cinematic story, Michael's light stood on one side, representing courage. Raphael's emerald glow rested on the other, representing honest healing. Gabriel's unwritten message hovered between them, waiting for a human decision. No force would choose for your soulmate. They had to decide which message to open first. Then something happened that neither they nor the person watching from afar could have anticipated. Before your soulmate touched the warning at the top of the screen, another notification appeared beneath it, a notification connected directly to you, even though you had not knowingly sent them anything. Their face lost all color. They read the first few words. And in that instant, they realized the doctor's appointment had not merely uncovered how much they missed you. It had brought them to the edge of a truth that someone had been keeping from both of you. Your soulmate stepped away from the crowded hallway and opened the notification fully. What they saw made them whisper your name. Then, with tears gathering again, they pressed and held the unfinished message they had written to you. Their finger moved toward send. But before it touched the screen, a voice behind them said, "You need to hear the whole truth before you do that." Your soulmate turned around. Standing at the end of the corridor was the one person they never expected to see there, the person who knew why the door in their dream had remained closed, the person who had seen the third line on that secret page, and the person carrying the missing piece of your story. And what they were about to reveal would determine whether your soulmate finally came toward you, or disappeared from your path before you ever learned how close they had been.